Hello and welcome to my last Remnant 100% completion New Game Plus hard mode run. In this run, I have nothing carried over from the previous run. I played through and did not unlock any new skills for Rush. There's no components carried over, no maps, no formations. I also did not even use Mr. Diggs once outside from his quest, and so there's no advantages there either. So it's essentially a new game, fresh file, but it is hard mode difficulty. As you see here, the only thing that is unlocked for Rush is invocations, which you get at the earliest part of the game on Pegasus side quest. So I'm disabling that since technically it would not be available in this tutorial segment. Also disabling Emma's one-handed wield style. That's just a personal choice to have her focus on a single wield style as early as you get control of her. But anyway, as we get into the run, I will be popping in explaining what it is that I'm doing as I work towards completing 100% of the guild tasks and quests. By the end of the game, we should have all three of the guilds knocked out and able to take on the most challenging version of the final boss. So again, I'll comment when appropriate. For now, just enjoy the first few tutorial battles of the game.
Let's kick some ass!
I'll make you remember the name Emma Honeywell. Nothing's wrong with keeping casualties to a minimum.
Alright, so just past the introductory battles, we go to Athlum here, and I'm going to complete my first off-camera task. I don't have anything carried over from the previous run, but what can't be helped is that the game will refund to you any money that you had spent in the previous run, in addition to the gold that you had at the end of the game that's also carried over. And so I'm starting with about 1.25 million gold, and that technically wouldn't be fair according to the rules of the run that I'm trying to complete here. So off camera, I'm going to go and buy a bunch of components from Rod's Components in the town square, and then just sell it back at a fraction of the price. It's going to take a little bit of time, which is again why it's done off camera. When we come back, I'll have as close to the 800 gold that you're supposed to start with as possible. And then one of the first tasks I like to do on any run, regardless of what Rush's ultimate weapon type is going to be, for these first couple tutorial fights with Pegasus and Blocter, I pick up a shield. Just having the additional defensive options of a shield, you're going to help you through that first segment. In fact, on a New Game Plus hard mode, you don't have the opportunity to craft high-end weaponry at the start of the game, so these two fights can actually be some of the most challenging that you've got to face before the shop becomes available. So at this point, you have to make a choice between either going with Blocter or Pegasus first. Really doesn't matter. If you're going to go with more of a mystic focused rush, you may as well take Pegasus quest first. That way you can use Blocter's quest to get some additional mystic uses in. But since I'm not going to go with a mystic rush this time around, I'm actually just going to go with Blocter first. You get a couple extra soldiers in Rush's Union to give him some more survivability. And so I may as well just go that route. As far as Blocter goes, you see that I turned off his one-handed combat arts and his herbs. I haven't decided completely yet what I'm going to do with him, but regardless, I would highly recommend disabling one of his 2 wield styles, just so that he has more focused growth. It's no sense in developing 2 different wield styles at weaker values, we'll say, than just focusing on one and then that much more quickly getting to the more powerful arts. And so I prefer Power Grip with Blocter. It hits a little bit harder. And so we'll just be starting with Smash. And I disabled the Zerbs because I want the opportunity to make him into an Axeman if I so choose when the time comes, and you have to make sure that his item and mystic balance is basically kept just with 1 level difference, and that's the way he starts out. So any extra herb usage and I could ruin my chances for getting Axeman with him. I'm going to fight this first couple of fights here with manticores, and the idea there is to get the manticore husks. I actually need to get 2 of them here in the earliest parts of the game for crafting the assassin's dagger. That's a guild task for sort of the 3 realms. I did not get 2 of them in this fight, and so I'm going to attempt to get one from the later manticore fight, but I would recommend getting it. And you see here what my sort of organization technique is when I get an item that I need for an upgrade or for a guild task, I select it to be retained at the top of the list. That way I don't accidentally sell it. So something you may want to incorporate in your own run just for the sake of organization.
Come on, let's kick some A!
That one looks like it hurts!
Sweet!
Come on! Flank him!
Piece of cake!
You and me then!
Stay down!
Can't get down like this! Alright! Bring it on!
This is the end! We're counting on you! They're flanking us? You wanna play? Sweet! Right.
Alright, so we're back in Athlum, and we completed Blocter's tutorial quest, and now it's time to switch over to Pegasus. During Blocter's quest, I did not obtain that second manticore husk, and so I'll have to return to Gasland Caves at a later time to obtain the second one of those for the Assassin's Dagger upgrades. Now that we're heading up with Pegasus, though, on a normal run, invocations would become available as soon as we enter Robalia, and so if I wanted to be fair, I could enable it now, but I said I'm not doing a Mystic Rush this time around, and so there's really no reason for me to do that. Here in Robalia, though, there's one task that at some point I have to complete. I'm looking to capture and split Vile Lizards. What I want to get is 2 of the inverted Vile Lizard scales, and so again, you got to capture, you have to split them, and it's a rare component from the split. One of those 2 is going to be for its own task. You just have to have the item in your inventory. The second is for the creation of the Death Mask, and the reason why I need 2 is the task for the Death Mask actually becomes available sooner than the inverted scales possession task, if you will, and so I may as well get the 2 because the one will be consumed in the creation of the Death Mask. But I'm not going to do that right now. Later on, I'm going to hire another addition to my party. I'm going to pick up Semri, and I'm going to use that task of obtaining these scales as an opportunity to gather similar components for his weapon upgrade. So we're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone there, so to speak. There's no reason to do it now when he will clone any components that are gained by splitting those Vile Lizards later on. So once Celapaleis is available, we'll hire Semri, and then we'll knock this task out.
Let's clean up these. What? Oh, damn it! I should inform you. There's no way I will lose. Ha! Here. That was effective. Seems our students won a battle.
Here I come! What?
Right.
Okay, we're back in Ethel again. Completed Pegasus' little tutorial, a little bit more challenging than Blocter's was. But at this point you get 12 Torgal added to the team, Emma rejoins, and you'll see here one of the first things I like to do with Torgal is disable one of his wield styles. I also disable herbs on the soldier in Torgal's union. As far as Torgal goes, choosing a wield style early, it's the same story as what I said about Blocter. Allows for more focused development rather than just being mediocre with two different wield styles. You may as well excel at one of them. In this case, I'm going with quad wield. Disabling the herbs on the soldier, that's a task I choose to do so that I don't consume my own components for healing. We've got Pegasus has restore, we've got Emma and another soldier has restore, so healing shouldn't be an issue, and you may as well not spend your own money on the earliest parts of the game. Here in Dillmoor, there's a couple tasks we hope to complete anyway. The first one is to get the chain count up to 10. I'm going to do that by fighting the Jana here on the bridge. The reason for the chain 10 guild task being done at this point is that when we get to Celapaleis, I can hire Semri. He's a unit that I like to bring along, at least through the Blackdale portion. We're taking on the Jana instead of some of the other enemies in this area, because we're also looking to get a couple of drops or splits from them. If possible, we're looking for them to drop Beastman Talons. I need 6 total to upgrade towards getting the Mermaid's Malice, which is a much later guild task. But again, you can get them now. We're looking to get 6 of them. I believe I do not get them all in this visit, so I'm going to have to come back off the clock to do so. And the second component I can get is Beastman Bones, also from the Jana. In that case, those are a split from either the fighters or the arc fighters. You need to get 4 Beastman Bones for its own guild task, and you'll see here that I'm doing what I did before, just highlighting the items to move them to the top of the list. So I'm going to fight a few more of these Jana, again in hopes of getting those items. Not going to get it done, but again, I can come back off the clock and get whatever I miss. You also have a chance here to get the bracelet drop. It gives a small HP increase, and getting it as a drop rather than spending the money on it is certainly welcome. Other than that, there's 2 other things that we could get here. One of them is, they're both from the boss fight, but one of them is Plante Fluid. You get those from the Vile Plants. They're a drop or a split, and we're looking for 2 of those for its own guild task. You see here I did get the bracelet. Still not getting all of the Beastman Talons that I want. But anyway, Plante Fluid, you can get two of those for its own guild task later on. If you don't get it from this fight, you can harvest it later in the Vale of the Gods. Also, I'm hoping to get Treant Fragments. You get that actually from the boss itself. It's a chance of it. It's a drop, and you need 2 of those for the creation of the Death Mask later on. If you don't get it from this fight, though, it's not something you have to do repeatedly. We have a couple other boss fights where there's a chance of dropping a Treant Fragment. So being that those are boss mandatory fights, we don't have to get too hung up on it right now.
There's still plenty of power left in these old bones.
Let's do this!
Come!
Piece of cake!
Alright, really only one comment here about this Vicious Plant boss fight, and that is you can avoid its use of natural gas, which is a union-wide damaging ability that also has a chance to inflict poison. You can avoid that if you can engage the boss before turn 3. And so you got to get it done either here on turn 1 or turn 2. And since there's so many enemy unions standing in the way on turn 1, turn 2 is really your only opportunity to send somebody over to the boss. I tried to, but I was intercepted. And so in this battle I do have to face natural gas, but you'll see that we get through it really without too many issues. Other than that, I mentioned earlier, hopefully we'll get the Treant Fragment, which is a drop by the Vicious Plant itself. Vile plants have to be, you can capture or split them, or they can get a drop all on its own to get Plante Fluid. I do get 2 pieces of Plante Fluid from this fight, and so I will not have to harvest them in the Veil of the Gods, but if you do not, you do have an option to get it without having to fight later on. The Treant Fragment, I do not get the 2 pieces, and so I will have to find another means to gather that component again for the Death Mask guild task later on. So for now, just enjoy the rest of this boss fight, and I'll comment more once we move on later in the story.
Run them through!
There's still plenty of power left in these old bones. What a glorious day!
Alright, so just a couple comments here regarding quests, since this is the very first quest that you're given in the game, and it is about as straightforward as they get. Almost all quests originate in the pub, but not all of them. There's the witches quests that are found actually in the towns themselves, and just a couple other quests that are initiated by talking to an NPC outside of the pub. Somewhere in town, but most of them can be started in the pub. In fact, there's some where you have to speak to someone in the pub first before you can interact with the NPC that will actually offer the quest. I'll comment more on that when those opportunities come along. But after this very first quest, one of the first things I'm going to do here is move on to Celapaleis. We'll come back, we'll take care of Baulson's quest before we advance too much further. But I'd like to go to Celapaleis, hire a couple of units, get Mr. Diggs before we go exploring Gaslin once more, so that I can get a couple of Diggs uses in during Baulson's quest. Okay, here in Celapaleis, you'll see the one thing I want to complete is to purchase the base level Otachi. That's a weapon that we'll be upgrading throughout the game to reach the Mermaid's Malice and then eventually the Demon Blade. I'm going to use this opportunity to sell what I've captured for monsters just to get a little bit of extra cash. And then from that point on, it's just interacting with this NPC to make the Mr. Diggs quest available in the pub. Okay, here we are doing Mr. Diggs' quest. I'm going to make a pit stop here at the very earliest spot of this cave. The reason I'm stopping here is just to point out that I will have to come back after this quest, and a new harvest point becomes available right here. And from that point, I'm going to look to get 4 fly needles, which is a rare harvest item, but I need 4 of them for the Mermaid's Malice upgrades. And again, you can get it without having to fight, and so that is my preferred method. During this playthrough, if I can avoid obtaining a component from fighting, then I'm going to. But again, I need 4 fly needles from that location. Now, the location we got the light metal from there on the wall, we can return to and get a couple other components as well. During Baulson's quest, I'm going to try to get a couple, and then I'm eventually going to get the balance off the clock. Real quick here, I'm just showing that I surely did not use Mr. Diggs at all in the last game. You can see his experience levels are basically at the starting values. And he also starts with the initial 5 digs, and so I will have to gather morsels in order to increase that value. But from that first harvest spot there in Gaslin, looking to get 3 pieces of Gaslin copper, looking to get 2 containers of natural oil, and I'm looking to get 3 pieces of copper ore. You can get all of those from that first harvest point, and so again, off the clock I'll be doing that. There's additional location for copper ore that I'll show you in Dillmoor here shortly, but again, these items are on the to-do list. There's the 4 fly needles, 3 Gazlan coppers, 2 natural oils, and 3 copper ore. Okay, just a reminder here, this is now the new harvest point. This is what I'll be coming to off the clock to get those 4 fly husks. Right now I'm just going to burn through all of my digs in hopes of maybe satisfying one of the guild tasks that I mentioned previously. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get anything to actually complete the task. I'll get a couple of pieces of copper ore, but I'll still have more to obtain, again, which I'll do outside of a recording. While I'm here, I've got a party with also a guest member along with. I'm going to fight the manticores in hopes of getting that manticore husk, and just to spoil it, I do get the piece that I was missing, and so we'll be able to cross that off of the list of things to do. And then shortly after that, we'll take down the boss fight here for Baulson's quest, and then we'll be adding him to the party before we move on to try to complete a couple other guild tasks.
Let's kick some ass. Nice. How you like that? Piece of cake.
Alright, this quest boss isn't that challenging, but I'll make a quick comment here about any of these quest bosses that have henchmen that are along with them. I would recommend taking down the henchman yourself. Your BR does get charged the experience for every enemy in the fight, regardless of whether you just kill the boss or if you kill everyone. But the thing is, if you don't kill the minions yourself, you don't necessarily get the drops or the bonus gold for doing so, and you get more gold for this fight if you take down the second enemy union. So that's one of the first things we'll target. On hard mode, Baulson's pretty much guaranteed to go down, but we will be able to wrap this up without really any issues.
Sweet! Leave it to me.
Okay, so we returned to Dillmoor here just so I can point out a couple of things here related to completion of guild tasks. Coming up here on the right, I'm going to pause for a moment and point out this harvest point on this tree. It is a spot where you can obtain the rare item timber. There's a later harvest point in Ivory Peaks where you can get it much more easily, but if you have the time and patience, you can get 4 pieces of timber from there. We'll need that for a later guild task. It's also, the reason I point it out is because it's a component needed by McGrady to upgrade his halberd, and that's actually something I'm going to end up doing off the clock. In fact, I'm going to be doing a little bit more than that, which I'll explain more once we get there. This harvest point, though, is where you can get copper ore if you did not get it from Gazlan, and it has a rare chance of finding commemorative metals, and so that is another guild task. You need 2 commemorative metals that you can obtain from that harvest point. And now if you don't get it from there, you can disassemble the broadsword that you're given at the start of the game, and you'll get 2 commemorative medals for that. So you have a couple options to satisfy that guild task. Here at this point you can see that we picked up our first morsel. That's the Gaster Morsel, and what it did is it restored Mr. Diggs to full digs count, and also increased the digs count by 1. So that's a permanent increase. He'll have 6 going forward until we find more morsels. But what I like to do is I'll just harvest down to 1 remaining, go grab that morsel, and then go back and spend the now replenished digs since I've come this far. And so again, a couple of things you can get here. The 2 commemorative metals, you can get copper ore, or you can try to harvest and get the 4 pieces of timber that we'll need later on.
Okay, later.
Yes!
Right.
Okay, so we're coming up on a break here on the world map. I'm going to save it and then come back after completing some things off the clock. I'm going to go back and get all of the components that I said that I wanted to obtain by this point in the story. And so some of those that are obtained from capturing and splitting a monster for a rare component, that's not something I want to record. That would be not very interesting to watch. Here now we've come back right from the break, and I'm going to show all of the things that I went back and actually got. I got those 2 rare inverted vile lizard scales, the timber from the harvest point in Dillmoor, the fly needles from Gazlan, Gazlan copper, natural oil, commemorative metals, and copper ore. These were all harvest items that I was looking to get off the clock, and then also went back and fought the Jana once more in order to get the missing Beastman talons. I needed 6 of those. And so at this point, we're basically up to date with everything we can get. The only outstanding item that I did not get from that boss fight was the Trian fragment, and we'll get that later on. I'm also showing you here that I gathered the components to upgrade McGrady's halberd. Those can be obtained without having to fight. So you gather the components through harvesting, enter town, and he'll upgrade it himself. With Baulson, I had to buy a base level halberd, and then upgrade it twice myself, which costs about 6,800 gold. And I'm going to show you here shortly how I got gold without having to fight anything. Very tedious process, but it can be done if you're looking to maintain a very low BR. Now the reason I'm trying to, or the reason I switched Baulson over to the halberd from the trident is because he has an illegal upgrade. If you keep him on the trident line, he'll switch over to huge size lances, and I don't really want him to go down that route. I'd rather he go down the glaive route, which is a large size spear, and there's advantages to that I'll touch on here shortly. But here I'm showing that there's an excavation point. It appears in one of 4 places. If it spawns, it's not guaranteed, but I'm pausing at each of these. Here, this is the 3rd spot where it could be, and then finally the 4th spot is just to the side of the bridge. And when you harvest from there, it has a base amount of 75 gold that you can get. If you have a bonus, you can get 80 or even 100 gold. There's a chance of picking up a couple herbs as an extra reward. But yeah, 75 gold with each visit, and I had to get 6,000, almost 6,800 gold to upgrade that halberd. So you can do the math of how many times I entered and exited this map to pick up gold. But anyway, I want him to go down the glaive line, Baulson anyway, because the huge size spears ends with the Fafnir's Bane, and while it has an impressive attack stat of 255, that's about its only advantage, and there's better options for him as far as weapon bonuses go if I keep him on the glaive line, and I don't want to. The other option is to give him a Naginata, and I don't want to have to craft that from scratch, and so hence the reason for the split. Or the switch over to the halberd. Here I'm focusing on Senmari. I'm showing that before we entered town, I gathered all the components necessary for him to upgrade his base sword to the next level, and once you enter town, he did upgrade it, and so I'm showing the change there, and also that we need the next tier's worth of components in order for him to upgrade any further. Now I'm going to make a pit stop here in the town square, and one other thing I did off the clock was I had multiple conversations with Baulson to move along his parameter bonus. I'm showing here that there's 2 soldiers plus Baulson that all have red talk bubbles. Now if you switch over to the map in a city, the only highlighted NPCs on the map are those that have red talk bubbles, and I'm showing here that there's only the 3 of them showing up, whereas if you look at the overhead map that's showing in the right hand corner right now, it shows that there's a lot more NPCs that can be interacted with. And so you can quickly pull up a map in any city to see if there's an NPC somewhere in the area that can be interacted with that has something important to say. Just a handy little trick there in an area when people might be hiding out of view. Here you see that I had the final conversation with Baulson to get his parameter bonus, and what it did is it gives a passive percentage bonus to his HP, went from 390 to almost 450. He's going to keep that, it's almost like a hidden accessory equipped on the character. He's going to keep that for the rest of the game, so as he continues to grow, he'll always have an improved HP stat. But the reason I wanted to talk about his parameter bonus here is it's the earliest one you can get. It's the easiest one to get, and what you do is you talk to him once when you find him in the town square after hiring him. From that point on, the tally begins to increase, and it increases every time you return to the world map and then return to the area where the NPC is. So I exited to the world map, went back into the town square where Baulson is. You don't have to talk to him at that point, but you have to return to the world map once more, and then the tally increases. And so you have to return to the world map and enter the town 2 times between red talk bubbles. Then you interact with them, the tally gets reset, you return to the world map, and repeat until you get to the very last sequence. At that point, it's a break of 3. You have to go back to the world map 3 times, and after that, when you interact with him, you get the parameter bonus. For most NPCs, it is 5 enter and exits to the world map. Baulson, I think, is put in there more as a tutorial as to how that element works, since it's very likely you're going to be going to Athlum's Town Square, and so you'll see Baulson in plain sight, and you'll see that he can be interacted with. Kind of tips off you as the player as to that there's something that can be done with any other recruits. So anyway, we've got his parameter bonus, and with that being said, we are going to take a very short break and take on the Blackdale segment. The last thing I'm doing here is just selling some additional monsters, and I am going to stock up on revive items just to make sure that I don't have to leave the area, return to town to restock, and I'll talk more as to why I don't want to leave once we get inside Blackdale. Alright, we've got the Blackdale fight, and the first thing you see that I'm going to do here is switch over to manual triggers and turn turbo mode off. That way I can try to complete these triggers myself. You get about an 80% success rate if you leave it up to the computer, but this fight can be pretty tough considering that the guest unions can be kind of weak on a New Game Plus hard mode where you have not had a chance to improve any of their equipment. And so doing the triggers yourself is going to hopefully give you that advantage you need to get through this. Now, strategy-wise, you'll see that your guest unions will engage the two closest enemy unions on the first turn. It can be best to just have Rush stand by so that you don't accidentally kill a third union. The reason for that is after you take down 3 unions, you're going to be met with reinforcements. And so in a perfect world, that third union will be Jaeger himself. If you can keep the other 2 enemy unions alive, obviously keeping yourself alive, take down Jaeger first, and then when the reinforcements show up, David will use the Gay Bolg and wipe everybody out. But that will not happen if Jaeger is still around. And so your focus is to take down Jaeger as quickly as possible, hopefully keeping David alive so that you get that Gay Bolg option on the following turn. This actually plays out perfectly in this fight where you'll see we are able to keep those enemy unions alive. There I failed a critical defense where Pegasus would have counterattacked and wiped that union out in a single hit, solely for the reason that I want to make sure that I can get Jaeger taken down first. Otherwise, those reinforcements will very likely overwhelm you, and that's something you're trying to avoid here in this fight. You'll see it all play out here shortly, and then I'll resume narration when we get inside Blackdale.
What the hell?
Check this out! What are you doing? fall upon me!
Okay, so we made it through that boss fight, and now we are inside Blackdale. And while we're here, we've got a couple tasks to complete prior to reaching the boss of the area. One of the first things we're going to do is we're going to fight some spiders. Looking to take down 8 spiders for the completion of the guild task. You'll see here that when you engage a group of spiders, it's a mix of both spiders and giant spiders, and so I'm going to fight 3 sets of them to make sure that I've taken down 8 regular spiders to complete that guild task. After that, I'm going to navigate through the area, and I'm going to save it right before the boss fight. Off the clock, I'm going to go back and I'm going to take down skull scavengers. I'm looking for 3 skull scavenger craniums. That's a capture and split, just like the vile lizards. So you need a single cranium for its own guild task, and 2 of them to create the berserker axe. While we're here, we're also going to get the Ischion Morsel, which is another digs upgrade. It's going to increase his digs count to 7 and fully restore whatever I've spent along the way. That's also located right towards the end, next to where you pick up the map. So if you are harvesting in this area, make sure you save at least 1 digs count to pick up that morsel near the end. And then lastly, since we've already taken down quite a few enemies outside this area, I'm looking to build my chain up to 36 before I take down the boss. The final fight here is against 14 enemies total, and so by getting the chain to 36 before that fight, I'll be able to satisfy the 50 chain guild task, and I'd like to do that here since I've already been forced to fight quite a few enemies. And so make sure you don't lose your chain count by accidentally running into an enemy without time shifting or starting the fight on your terms. Don't let them ambush you to where you lose the chain, but you may as well get the 50 chain count here because later on we'll want to turn that task in and hire the unit that becomes available as a result, so we can use that to complete another guild task.
Let's do this! Come on, let's kick some ass! How you like that? Sweet! Come on out! Okay, later. Come on out! Awesome! Okay, later.
Alright, coming back from the break, and I'm going to start off by showing you that I did get those 3 Skull Scavenger Craniums that I said I was going to get off the clock. That being done, now we're going to take on the boss. One of the things I did is I turned critical triggers back onto manual, and on the very first turn of this fight I'm going to go back to normal speed so that I can perform the triggers myself. Strategy-wise, you're looking to take out every enemy that you initially engage so that you can push the morale in your favor, and that can be really challenging to do, especially with Russia's Union, where you've only got three units in there. So if you don't get a critical trigger on your very first unit, which we do here, it's very unlikely he's going to be able to take out his target on the first turn. But we were successful in this case. Speaking of your very first target there, your default target is the one that's closest to you. And if you, in this fight, try to engage any other enemy union with rushes, you're going to get intercepted. They're just faster than you in this fight, and so you may as well go with the default so that you don't take a penalty to your morale by being intercepted. Morale is the key to victory here, and to push that in the earliest part of the game, you really need everyone to take out their initial targets on that very first turn. High morale means that the enemy, the fiery idol itself, will use Desperate Wail instead of Inferno Insignia, and you want to postpone its use of Inferno Insignia for as long as you can. On the New Game Plus, where Rush might have some morale shifting arts, you may be able to keep morale high, but on a new game, fresh run, you don't have any morale shifting options other than taking out enemy unions. And so that's actually what happens here. We keep morale up, we get 1 Desperate Wail, but I'll let the rest of the video show you how everything played out. It's a pretty close fight, but I wouldn't have recorded it if we didn't make it through. In fact, it was the second attempt, so for the sake of transparency, this did take 2 tries. But considering it's New Game Plus hard mode, and I haven't really crafted anything, that's really not that bad.
Not bad.
So there's Inferno Insignia, and you see that in addition to damage, it also inflicts burn. And so that's what I'm looking at here while I'm putting commands in this. I'm actually looking at my individual units to see if any of them have little flames on them to indicate that they are still suffering from burn status. If a unit is burned, they will act last. It reduces the speed to 0, and so the reason I was considering staying engaged was because no one in my team was burned, and that would mean that I would be able to use the herb item art prior to the enemy taking action. But ultimately I decided to pull back, knowing that more than likely Torgo's Union was going to fall, so that I could use 2 restorative herbs rather than just the 1.
That was a close one.
I know I'm good.